up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we get easily one of the most requested guests ever on this channel, Terrance Hobbs of the almighty Suffocation. Thanks for being here, man.
What up, everybody, man? It's good to be here, man. Good to be hanging out with you, Alex.
Yeah, it's great we're finally able to make this interview happen. In fact, we were talking about it in like 2017, like right when I started this channel.
I know. Alex, I'm the worst when it comes to interviews, man. I take it for granted after all these years that people have heard everything I have to say or everything I've had to play. So it's just one of those things.
Well, you know what? It's all good. It's all good. I'm finally glad to make it happen and make the 4-year wait worth it because now we got the Live in North America live album coming out. This features the last tour with Frank Mullen on vocals. So thanks for giving this because I think people who didn't get to experience such an amazing tour, this gives them the feeling of that. First question regarding it though. Could this serve as maybe a way to hold fans over while we wait for a follow-up to Of the Dark Light or?
Absolutely. Well, you have to figure the last time that we toured with Frank was like 2 years ago. So it took us quite a bit to just get everything together, get an engineer, have the place to rehearse. We were out on the road for a while and then COVID hit and it, kind of made things move a lot slower for us than I guess other bands because we do have some international members. And with the way that things are, like, with the visas and the COVID and the locking down of the borders and, the no flying in and no flying out kind of shit really kind of made things move slow. But yeah, man, we have another album that we're going to be hoping that we can get done by the middle of next year and have that thing ready to go for you guys. We're about halfway there in the writing process of it, which is good. But as I said, things are still moving slower. And really, it took us about 2 years just to get this Live in North America together for Frank Mullen and to give him a good farewell for you fans and with good material on it and songs that we really felt were strong. Out of all that whole entire tour that we did, it was only like maybe 1 or 2 shows that we thought were worthy. And we happened to pick Massachusetts, which was really good one. They really treated us well there. And
yeah,
got it done, man. Got it done.
There's a lot in the Suffocation camp to be celebrating though at this time because this year is the 30-year anniversary of the debut album Effigy of the Forgotten. Anything we could do to celebrate?
Older and wiser, man.
But can we be expecting a celebration for this album? I mean, what's like the memory going back to that even?
Well, I'm not gonna say it was a mixed bag. Obviously, it was like one of the greatest things that have happened in my life musically, like as far as that goes, fans were in the very beginning, fans weren't as supportive because at that time, like in the early, like 1989, 1990, 91 area, things were like really starting to go down in the music industry as far as death metal and really aggressive metal. It was kind of just starting to stagnate. And I think that, once Peers from Within actually did come out, which is 30 years, that's a long fucking time. Once that all came out and Effigy had made its little staple in the underground world, things got a little bit easier. But for me, it was a pinnacle time because, the band was in turmoil, things were breaking up, although it was like the best music or studio experience or just being able to get out live to go and play in front of some people back at that time was really an eye-opening experience and something I would never want to change in my life. But it was a little different, I can't say it was like yay because there was a lot of rough times in there.
Well, I mean, really, the 89 and 90, I've always thought was such a prime time for metal because, think about all those Sound of Perseverance, Crystal Mountains, Heartwork.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, great records came out. Fantastic albums came out. But it was still new. So bands weren't able to travel so freely back and forth, communicate so freely with each other, like with the internet. Everything was more mail order and things like that. So it was a little tougher, but also at the same time, the band also it was still a relatively new band. So we kind of really didn't know what we were going to focus on or focus our attentions, or if things were getting tough, what we would do for that period of time. So I think that it was a learning experience beyond anything.
Yeah.
And it still had its share of great times. There was plenty of cool stuff that was happening back then for us. Being able to play with bands, being able to meet the bands that we really enjoyed and loved. Being able to go out to shows every weekend was great, but it was also so saturated with bands that it was very hard for bands to get gigs. Just to be able to play out live was kind of tough. Is where now I think it's opened up a lot more that like there's smaller venues that house more up and coming bands. People are trying to get bands into the country more and exchange more. So bands from here are going over to Europe and going to South America and doing things like that. So I think it's opened up a lot more since then.
Okay.
But I can't necessarily say it was the greatest of times, but it still had its share of problems.
I mean, could maybe region have something to do with it too? Because I mean, like, I can't tell you how many times I've shown Suffocation to people who are just getting into death metal, and they think you guys are from Tampa.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's like one of the most common things in the world. I mean, you got to figure Cannibal was down there, Morbid was down there, Death was down there. Everybody was down there that like kind of really made that 1991 to 1995 scene really hit in America, and that was the staple. It wasn't New York or California at that point in time. It was Florida and Morris Sound Studios. Jim Morris, Scott Burns, those guys like really kind of cornered the market at that time. Yeah, there was other engineers, Colin Richardson, things like that, that were out there at the time that were really doing a lot, but they weren't really producing as much metal as Morris Sound was. And I mean, Obituary, come on, so many of the greatest bands were down there. And people get confused because we're in that time and era that they don't realize that we stayed in New York when everybody else left New York and went down to Florida.
Well, I think I see the New York vibe in it because of like the community. Like when I go to a Suffocation show, because I've seen Suffocation, whether I saw you at Summer Slaughter or whether I saw
you a million times already being a New Yorker.
Yeah, but like I always like see the guys in Internal Bleeding and Malignancy and like these tech death bands and all. It's like I think really people don't understand that New York also has a great scene here as well.
It really does. And I mean, a lot of us, like in general, up here in New York, coined so much of the hardcore in the United States and coined so much of like seriously aggressive music, from that standpoint on, because I mean, bands before us, not necessarily thrash bands, but bands like the Cro-Mags and Biohazard and Agnostic Front and those style of bands are like really, to me, the true hardcore bands from New York that really coined the hardcore genre, let's say, where a lot of bands now always try to imitate that kind of aggressive type of music. But meanwhile, Suffocation was kind of cutting into a different thing. Like we were taking like almost like thrash metal riffs and putting those grinding and heavy drums behind it and still having the breakdowns, of course. And that was that influence of like kind of hardcore-ish music that just like affected us as kids, because those bands like DRI and things like that were really just another facet of really aggressive music, and we just ate that shit up.
Yeah.
We were like, we really just want to have that kind of vibe where it came from hardcore to the chills on your neck from the thrash metal and the kind of darkness that Slayer gave you that made you go, ooh, we kind of wanted to incorporate a lot of those things in there. And I can't necessarily say that we coined the hardcore, New York hardcore term, but, we did have a little piece in there. So for the people that actually say that about us or whatever, thank you for giving us the time of day, but I don't think it was really us. I think it was, those bands that gave us that influence.
Well, you incorporated a lot of things in Suffocation. Like, as a diehard Suffocation fan, I'd be able to tell what's off of Breeding the Spawn or Pierce from Within or, Blood Oath, etc. So, like, it's fair to say that with your songwriting, you've always experimented and maybe incorporated new tricks and twists, right?
Yeah. Definitely we've always tried to experiment with bringing in some different riffs, different time frames, things like that. But also in the same way, each of our albums aren't like exactly the same. They all have a different sound to them. They all have a different little vibe to them, which I think is cool. And it gave us a little bit of more room to like grow and create. The band had changed so many different times throughout the course of the years that, different vibes were brought in and different aspects of writing were brought in that were different than the original lineup, And I hopefully over the course of time, because, now that we're saying goodbye to Frank and this is his last thing, and I'm like really the last original member left, I just want people to be able to listen to the discography and be able to see how we've grown in musicianship and things like that. But we still are that tech brutal band, you know. It's never going to change from being that.
Yeah.
It's like when you hear Suffocation, you know what you're going to get.
Absolutely. It's the what I call the smorgasbord of brutality. Like I think in the end there is like, traditional guttural death metal, but I see tech death. And I mean, and I'm not saying accusing you guys of hopping on a trend, but I could tell that maybe that there was some of the Gothenburg influences incorporated in your sound as well.
There was a lot. I mean, we weren't very closed-minded when it came down to listening to music. Even now, we all listen to all sorts of different musics. We like the Swedish metal, the melodic metal, the death metal, the grindcore, the hardcore. There's always a band in there or two that has that vibe that you just know is like really representing that kind of aggressive nature, whether or not it's black metal and they just do it, they do it really well. And those things like kind of etched in our minds as well. We want to try to take our time in writing riffs and making riffs something tangible, not something that, like you're going to forget tomorrow or something like that, or that you have to listen to it 750,000 times to comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of want to maintain that middle ground now as we got older and matured out. I think that, I think a good standpoint of the direction that we were looking for was like the album Pinnacle of Bedlam. I think that kind of cut the brutal and it cut the aggressive and it cut the heavy in it. And it was just a good album showing the band as a band, not as an edited out band and everybody's doing everything over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was in a room writing it together, and it made a big difference in my opinion. So that's one of my favorites, actually.
For your songwriting process, I kind of wanted to get deep into it because, like, when I hear those riffs and the soloing and all this, like, I feel like also an essence of emotion behind it as well. Like, is it fair to say that, like, in order to, like, get that inspiration, do you, like, almost wait for inspiration to hit you? Do you represent an emotion, or do you have a usual place you go to in order to cultivate
I mean, there's some formulas that Suffocation's always used that are just like, let's say a lattice work of things that, we try to touch on and everything. But when it comes down to inspiration and everything, we kind of, at least for me, because, I've been listening to music, especially aggressive underground music for a long time. Sometimes there's those things that just hit you and it's just like, whoa, that's really fucking sick. And it will give you inspiration to sit on your guitar and be like, I'd like to manipulate something in that vein or something like that. And a lot of times we use different techniques, obviously, in writing for ourselves and for everything else. There's just times where I'll just be sitting late at night and just working on a riff, and then I'll sit my guitar down and I'll be like, okay, that's, I'm going to let that sit there for a little while and see if there's something else that I like that would flow into it and give it some type of movement and some type of feeling and some type of change. Like, we're not looking to just make a riff after riff after riff and kind of put them together. We really want everything to flow together as a song. And, we experiment with as much as we possibly can. Like any different technique, from writing a riff and sending it to somebody else over the internet to just sitting down in the room together, getting inspiration from music that we're listening to and having an idea. We'd love to do some kind of cool idea like that. You know what I mean? So we try to cover all the bases as much as we possibly can.
And that's really refreshing to hear you to see, because I always ask guitarists, and especially like some guitarists, they only could come up with ideas when they're the company of their other bandmates, or they can only write it alone in isolation. But you seem to thrive in both techniques.
Well, I try to, because there's no reason for, this band in its day and age and with, the new blood that we have in the band. And they're not so new anymore. They've been with us for like a half a decade at this point. So, their influence has a lot to do in writing and the things that they bring forth to me and that I bring forth to them. Everybody's got like a little bit of different take on things, which I think is the best thing for us, because literally it keeps things fresh for everyone. As opposed to like, let's say, okay, I've written so much of all these records, I'm just going to continue to do the same thing and you guys have to follow it, and that's that. Like, it's not that way. We want to have that influence. We want to have that new blood. We like that things are changing, you know, and that things change in the mix of writing music. But we still want to keep that same brutal Suffocation standpoint that always was. And I think everybody's head is in it that way. You know what I mean? Like we all know we got to make the best Suffo record that we can make. So we all sit down and try to do our part as much as possible.
And with Of the Dark Light, there was like a bit of extra context behind it as well, because I'm not sure if this was announced or if it was just a feeling I had, but like we knew it was going to be the last record with Frank on it, so there was almost kind of like a certain aura surrounding it where it represented like the dawning of a new age, in you will.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like our zodiac sign. You know, we go from one zodiac into another after all these years, and it's the same thing with us. You know, people, like especially in bands after all these years, some people are super fond of it in the beginning and then they grow out of it, or they grow up, or they have health problems, or you know, this, that, or the other. And I think that's what happened to a lot of them. I mean, me, I'm just a diehard guitar player, and I'm always going to be, you know, until my fingers fall off or, you know, wither away into the dirt. And I think it's different for people like vocalists and stuff like that, because as time goes on, their vocals change. You know, life gives them a little bit different of a fucking roll of the dice, or maybe they're just over it, you know. And with the prior members of the band, I think it was a combination of all of those with certain people. And for me, you know, as I said, I'm just a diehard. So to play the music that I'm playing and to have the band that I do have, I'm very fortunate to have the support of all the fans and everybody out there that's seen this band change throughout all the years and still stick with us and buy our records and, you know, say, hey, thanks a lot for it, or say, hey, you guys suck. Either way, you know, somebody's paying attention, and that's what really.
Well, the other thing is, and I'm not like saying this to blow smoke by any means, but like every time I see either you guys play or, you know, I've seen you at shows, you know, I've seen you at Cannibal Corpse shows, you know, you guys are just like, I've always said Suffocation is evil music for good people. And I think there's just
That's exactly it. You know, I mean, you know, we're not going to go Striper. You know, it ain't going to happen.
Never say never.
We're not going to have singing in our music. It just doesn't fit the vibe. You know, we kind of know where we want everything to stand, and it's still brutal, you know, and coming at you. But I mean, really, it's just music, and I think that's a standpoint of what Suffocation has been throughout the course of the years. We were the kind of guys that went out there in t-shirts and sweatpants and fucking cut off jeans and or whatever it may be, and blue jeans, and just went up there and rocked on music. As where a lot of other bands, you know, they have their gimmicks and they have the makeup and they have the, you know, the flames and the ego booster boxes and, you know, all the rest of that stuff that's on the stage that make a great stage show. Don't get me wrong. But for us, we were just a straight up, you know, band. We wanted to go up there and just do our thing. It wasn't a matter of looks. It wasn't a matter of any of that. It was a matter of us just trying to be aggressive and bring our form of music to everybody. And still, we like to perpetrate ourselves that way still to this, you know what I mean?
And that led me perfectly into my next question, because as somebody who has seen you live, it's always for me a different experience. Like I love seeing Suffocation live, and this Live in North America record really reminded me why that is. But is there maybe at all a similar energy that you put into your live presence as you do when you're our songwriting?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the songwriting is one thing, you know, we're always trying to put energy into it. We're always trying to be aware of what we do when we're writing and mold its direction and mold what we're doing with it. When it comes down to live, though, that's when it's just straight up adrenaline, you know? And, you know, whether or not it's fucking 50 people, 100 people, 150 people, or so on, you know, it's our job to put energy into our music, and that's what we feel live. Down in our rehearsal room, it's a little bit different because we're concentrating on what we're all doing, and we're bringing that into the muscle memory area of things. But when it goes out to live on the stage, that's where we get our workouts, and that's where we get really the most satisfaction of being able to get that sweat on, being able to play our music, being able to have the fans feed off their energy, give back the energy. You know what I mean? It's just something that, forget it. I watched Charlie, my other guitar player, go flying off the fucking stage, like as soon as he possibly can. And I'm like, dude, simmer down. I need you with all your fingers. You know what I mean? Like, I need you to keep them. It's fun to fucking bash your friend and shit, and you're all souped up and ready to go. But I gotta get you. I gotta keep you playing. So, that energy level, it just takes everything that we're doing from here up to here. And,
Yeah.
we love it. We love it.
Yeah, the constant headbanging as well. You guys are the
Oh, yeah,
championship
we feel it.
headbangers. And
Yeah.
I have two more questions for you. One is going back to songwriting, and it's the most difficult question of the interview. If you're ready,
No problem.
how do you know when a song is done?
Actually, I don't. It happens so much. It happens so much that, like, we do that hindsight thing where, like, we've already recorded a whole bunch of stuff, and then you go back and you listen to it, and you're like, fuck, I should have done that right there. I should have fucking done it. No. But what it does is it gives us the opportunity to kind of maybe try this stuff live, and improvise and stuff. But really, it's like we'll get to the end of the song and we'll think it's really great, and we'll think that we did our job. We hit all of our little marker points in the song, and then I shit you not, once it's all said and done and recorded, we're like, fuck, we should have done that, man. That riff, why didn't it come at this point in time? And So we get that vibe every now and then where it's just like a song isn't finished. We don't want it to be finished. So at this point now in our writing, we're just taking our time, like piecing it together so we don't really get that kind of feeling like, fuck, we should have done this. We should have done that. And we had that idea. We didn't do it now.
Yeah. Inspiration strikes at the most inconvenient times.
It really does. It's like you totally like, wow, what in epiphany time, You could be on tour just like going over riffs because you know that you're going to want to play it, And you'll just be sitting there, fuck, and then you hear it in your head, and you're like, shit, I should have done it. This song's just not done. Maybe the ending of the song will fade out in the record. It was just because we'll turn around and be like, we have all these different endings. We're probably better off ending the song right here. Because we get so many different, I'll write one riff, and then Charlie will write the end of the riff, and then he'll write the next part, and I'll write the end of it, and then Derek will write. And then by the time that you do that, we have so many different variables that aren't put on paper for us to listen to that we end up just like fucking scrapping the idea. Like, man, we're not going to do this. This is just too fucking crazy.
I can only imagine what like a hard drive in the Suffocation library.
It's a scrambled egg blender of brains in a room.
I mean, are you ever worried that like the ending or the song or riff idea is going to be a B-side and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
I've never worried about having a hit, mind you. And as far as a B-side, I haven't seen a B-side in a long time unless I bought an album, And usually if I buy a vinyl, I don't even play it. I just use the CD or an MP3 or something,
Yeah.
But I mean, even for us, just in arranging the songs, we try to have, for all the material we have, we try to place each song in a way that we feel like it'll have a vibe, just like writing our riffs. Like we want one riff to really have its matching sister or brother or father riff or whatever it may be flow together, so that they all have a feeling to it.
Oh, definitely.
We want to do the same thing. We want to do the same thing when we're picking our songs and putting it on a CD.
Yeah, and are you thinking about that
now
live?
We haven't had to worry about a B-side in a minute.
Well, that's really good you bring that up too, because a song order can make or break an album. Like there's great songs. Do you think about that when you're playing live too? Because you have to mix different songs from different eras.
Oh, dude, you have no idea on how everybody is just like, we should play this song. No, we'll play this song. We'll play this song, then this song, then this song. No, let's switch this song there because it does this. And we do that like every single fucking show. I mean, you would think that we just are running on a straight rehearsed theme every night. And it's not, because Suffo likes to change up a couple of songs in the set every now and then. And at that point in time, we're like, yeah, we're going to play these ones, but we're adding these ones and we're taking these ones out. Then at that point in time, we're fucked because we don't know which one where we want to put them. So we'll be sitting there in the green room like, fuck, dude, how are we going to do this? We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We'll finally hash it out. And then usually we'll end up playing another song or two at the end of the set anyway. So that'll fill in the gaps for the ones that we didn't we didn't say, oh, we forgot that song. All right, we're going to play that now,
And how much of a pain in the ass is it too? You always got so many underground fans who just want like that deep cut of a song.
They want to hear what they want to hear, and that's it,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm just not going to have the band playing, 11 records straight.
Yeah.
at one show. You know, everybody will be burnt out after the 13th song. So
Never say never.
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, we'll do a 2-hour one eventually. You know,
And
but we're gonna bide our time on that.
fair enough. And the final question I wanted to ask you is, and I've mentioned it before, but like there are so many bands that have taken inspiration from you, both here in the local scene, you know, Malignancy and Immortal Suffering and Solemn Vision, but you also have,
I love those bands.
yep, and you of course like have, you know, like I can't tell you how many deathcore bands I've interviewed, from Whitechapel to Suicide Silence to Carnifex, who I saw
Boys.
last night, who take inspiration from you. When you hear how a newer death metal band or a band in another genre holds you as a guitarist as an inspiration, does that maybe change your perspective on how you look at yourself as an artist? Are you thinking about yourself differently than when you were in the underground scene in a way?
Well, I mean, I try to remain humble as best as possible. I find it super interesting that people would even consider me in that vein because, you know, there's always somebody bigger, better, and better out there in the world. I mean, once you've listened to Steve Vai as a guitar player, you know, everybody's pretty pale in comparison, you know? So, I mean, for me, I just have to say thank you guys for even, you know, paying that much attention to me. But in the real thing, it's all about you. We're all doing the same type of thing. We're all trying to keep our heavy metal and our roots out there and just bring forth that musical vibe or musical genre. And if they attest a little bit of their writing style or anything to myself or my band, I appreciate a lot. That's just, you know, I mean, it's like thank you because I enjoy those bands just as much as I hope they enjoy us.
Well,
You know?
that final tour with Frank, I'm just gonna say it's almost kind of like, I mean, I got a similar vibe as like when I watched Bohemian Rhapsody, the Live Aid scene, and like that show at Gramercy Theater. That was a historical death metal show. People were crying. People were crying. I've never seen people crying in the mosh pit before. Like,
I mean, I guess they got hit in the eye a little bit too much, but I mean, all I can say is, you know, I appreciate everything that Frank really did. He really gave a lot to the metal scene, and I'm glad that he's going out on his own terms. You know, it wasn't like something else that changed his mind. It was him that changed his mind. And us being friends, I mean, I just seen him 3 days ago. I was hanging out with him, you know, and it's like we're always going to be good people between each other and good friends since we were in high school. And I mean, you know, for all the people that are going to miss him out there that has been listening to his music and his shtick and everything for all those years, it's the same thing for me and some of my guys. You know, we all are good friends together, and we hate to see somebody go. But it was his choice, so more power to him. I wish him the best in anything that he wants to do. I mean, he's not out of the music scene yet. He's not out of the music business yet because there are people that would like him to, let's say, sing backup on an album for a line or two or something like that. You guys should really seek Frank out for those things if that's what you want to do. Because for him to go into a studio and sing or something is a lot different than him writing a record or going out on the road. So I really got to make that separation of church and state is where he would be able, like, let's say you had a band, Alex, and you wanted Frank to sing a couple of lines on it, you could probably solicit him if the price was right for him to do it.
sounds good.
So that's always a good thing for everybody else that's out in the world.
Awesome.
If you're trying to get him to be in your band and go on tour, well, you're going to have a lot more problems.
Fair enough. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for such a great chat.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Is there just anything else you'd like to promote for the release of Live in North America when this virus that shall not be named is behind us?
Come out the middle of next month, man. Live North America's coming out. Frank Mullen's last thing. Nuclear Blast fucking Records, which is the best label ever. You know, we're working on getting out and being out on the road with you. We have 3 local shows. We're going to have one in Amityville. We're going to have one down in Maryland. And we have one in Atlanta coming shortly in the month of November. So if you people on the East Coast happen to have a little bit of spare time, maybe you could come out and see us. And, you know, we're looking for 2022 to be a much better year for everybody with their health, with their music, and with being able to travel and get out there. So we want to see you out there on the road.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Terrance of Suffocation, Live in North America, coming out via Nuclear Blast in November. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.
You got it, Alex. Peace be with you guys.